I took another glance at the man outside, and he was still staring, but this time he had an annoyed look on his face. This wouldn't have been too bad if it had just ended there, but it didn't.
Oh no. Nothing ever bad has happened to me on Christmas. For the life of me, I can't think of anything to say at the front of this video that's relevant because Christmases have always been wonderful for me. I hope they have been for you too. But apparently there's been some bad Christmas stories. Spook's gonna tell us a couple today. Make sure to head on over to his channel and subscribe. Hit the notification bell, and if you like reaction videos, guys, make sure to subscribe to my channel as well. Let's get into this video.
This story took place 4 years ago, and it still haunts me to this day.
Okay.
It was Christmas night, and my family were driving home from this fancy restaurant.
All right.
I, unlike my family, wasn't tired, so the 45-minute drive seemed perpetual.
After a restaurant.
On top of that, my little sister was constantly moaning about how her friend didn't get her anything for Christmas.
Oh.
After about 20 minutes of driving, my dad stopped at a gas station to get some cigarettes, and my sister, brother, and mother all got out to pee. I stayed in the car as I had already gone before we left. Once they all left, I decided to play a few games on my phone.
Yeah.
I looked at the car clock and saw that 10 minutes had passed.
Wow.
So I immediately wondered what was taking them so long.
Uh-oh.
As soon as I peered out the car window,
Robbery or something?
I saw a man staring at our car. The man startled me as I didn't know how long he had been watching.
Right.
What made it even more unnerving is that he had a plain, blank face. No expression was shown. It was hard to make out any features as it was pretty dark, and he wasn't standing in an illuminated part of the station.
He had a mask?
He was about 5'9" and looked to be middle-aged. Once he saw me notice him, he started walking towards the car, and I'd be lying to tell you if I wasn't scared.
Right.
Luckily, my dad came back with the rest of the family,
Oh, thank
just
goodness.
as the man took a couple of steps. My dad apologized and told me he had been in an argument with a cashier. I didn't care. I was just glad that my dad was with me. I took another glance at the man outside, and he was still staring, but this time he had an annoyed look on his face. We drove off, and for the rest of the car ride, I couldn't stop thinking about that man. This wouldn't have been too bad if it had just ended there, but it didn't.
Oh no.
Later that night, I was watching YouTube while everyone else was asleep.
He tailed you home?
And lucky for me, a storm was raging over us. I enjoy storms. It makes me cozy as I'm lying in bed.
Most people, yeah.
I put my phone down and just enjoyed the ambiance. That didn't last for long as I heard something smash into the window behind me. I lurched forward and nearly fell out of the bed. I thought a bird had just smashed into the window.
What?
I parted the blinds, and what I saw next haunted me.
Oh my god.
I saw a man standing out by my parents' cars, looking up at my room. I took a closer look,
Dude,
and I
that
nearly
same
had a
guy.
heart attack. It was the same man that I saw at the gas station.
Followed you home.
Only this time, when our eyes met, he grinned. Out of fear, I screamed at the top of my
Wow.
lungs. My dad came running down the
In a
stairs and entered
storm.
my room. "Why the hell are you screaming?" he asked. I told him about the man, and I explained everything that had happened. My dad grabbed a baseball bat and told me to call the police.
Right.
After 10 minutes, the police turned up outside our house and found the man in our shed. He got arrested, and that was the last time I saw him.
What a freak,
The
dude.
next day, my dad inspected the house, and we found the handle of our back door had been damaged,
Wow.
but not completely broken. This gives me an eerie feeling, as if he actually managed to get in, he could have harmed us or possibly killed us.
Well, of course. You know, he could have did it at the gas station, too. So many things happen in these stories that just drive me crazy. Like, why didn't you say something to your dad when your family got back in the car about the weird man approaching you or whatever? Like, it doesn't have to be this weird thing, you know, this big thing. You could just tell your dad, hey, this dude was just approaching the car like he wanted something earlier. You know, it could just be a genuine concern that maybe he needed something. But when he backed off, it's suspicious behavior. You could share that with him too. Just, I don't understand, man. If something weird happened to me when my wife was in the store, and she came back into the car, I'd tell her. You know what I mean? I'd say, yeah, this weird thing just happened, you know? I don't know why people don't communicate more. Anyway, next story.
This happened during Christmas a couple of years ago,
Okay.
when I was spending holidays with my parents and little brother, along with my cousins, aunts, and uncles. We live in a suburb in Ontario, but we were venturing out in the woods for Christmas,
Right.
which was an idea that my parents had had for a while. They always loved the idea of being out in a hunting cabin during Christmas with their families.
Okay.
During this time, I was 18 and my little brother Tom was 11. We also had a dog,
Secluded
a German Shepherd called Trigger, who came along with us on the
Like
trip
that
as
name.
well. We left our house on Christmas Eve at about 2 p.m.
Okay.
and climbed into our dad's truck. We arrived at a small village near the cabins we were staying in and caught up with my dad's sister, Billy, along with her husband and 3 kids.
All right.
They didn't converse for long, but Billy was unsure of where to go from the village to get to the cabins, so
Right.
my dad helped her out by writing down the directions. We soon got back on our way and arrived at the cabins at around 4 p.m. They were a cluster of them, sort of spaced out around the woods.
Like a campground.
Each family had a cabin each, and there was one where everyone could meet up with a pool table, a swimming pool, and all sorts.
Oh, yeah.
It was kind of a place where we could all just chill together and enjoy each other's company. We had
I've been to
dinner,
some campgrounds
opened
like
our
that.
presents, and Christmas was great. It was now about 10 p.m., and my brother and I were getting a bit tired,
Right.
so we decided to go to bed.
Drinks,
My dad
food.
kept his rifles in a bag, which he kept under the bed I was sleeping on.
Okay.
He'd usually keep it in a locked box, but thought there was no point since we were going hunting the next morning.
Sure.
Tom and I were sharing a room at the end of the cabin, facing a flowing river. Tom and I fell asleep with our dog, Trigger, lying at the bottom of Tom's bed.
Sure.
Now, this is when things began to get creepy. It was about 3 a.m. when I awoke to growling.
Okay.
It was Trigger. Like I said, Trigger is extremely
It's
overprotective
so good.
and growls at any noise he hears. But it was weird because no one in the cabin was making any type of noise. Suddenly, his growling turned to barking, which woke up Tom.
Of course.
He asked me what was going on, but I said Trigger must have heard some deer or something outside.
It's in the woods. It could be an animal, straight up. And I mean, honestly, listening to a dog bark at something it can cause alarm or whatever. But if it's in a circumstance like if you're in the woods, you know, a different place, I imagine that it could be overlooked, but it still probably warrants looking around at it.
After all, we were in the middle of the woods. Suddenly, our bedroom door swung open and the light switch was turned on. My eyes stung as I tried to focus on whoever it was at the door. It was my dad.
Okay. He was
Were
getting
you
done.
two laughing just now?
Oh.
He asked us as I
Nope.
turned to look at Tom, his eyes wide and his face pale. No, I replied as he
what
moved
Trigger
over
was
towards our
barking at.
curtain, pulling it back as he looked out into the pitch black wilderness. What are you looking at? Tom asked as our dad closed the curtains again. Nothing, just go back to sleep. I was kind of creeped out that my dad didn't say anything about what he was doing, but he turned our light off
He
and
didn't
we
wanna
tried
scare
falling
him, I
back asleep
guess.
again. Of course, I couldn't.
Yeah.
I was wide awake for the rest of the night, flinching at pretty much every noise. It
Just
was
think if
about
he would've said,
4:30 a.m.
"I saw
when I
somebody.
finally
I thought I
drifted
saw
off,
somebody."
but it must have been moments later I heard strange crunching noises coming from outside our window.
Oh no. Some
I was
walking.
sure this wasn't some sort of animal.
Right.
It sounded like footsteps. I had this overwhelming feeling of fear, and I pulled the covers over my face. I then heard a faint tapping on our window, which lasted a few good minutes.
Oh my god, dude.
I was so petrified I couldn't move. Trigger was awake by this point, as I saw his face turn towards the window, his ears pointed, and listening intently. The tapping started again,
Why was he
but
not
louder
barking
this
at
time,
this now?
causing Trigger to bare his teeth.
Yeah.
What happened next was the most terrifying thing that has ever happened to me. I know you're in there, little guy. This
Wow.
deep and husky voice whispered as a horrible shiver went down my spine. Why don't you come out here and play with me?
What the hell?
Initially, I thought it was bound to be one of my cousins playing a stupid prank on us.
Right.
So I leaned forward and peeked through a gap in the curtain, ready to give them hell for scaring the hell out of us. But standing there wasn't any of our cousins. It was a creepy old man.
Wow.
Who was around 60. His hair matted and his clothes looked dirty and ancient. He was stroking the window with his hands, breathing on it as he spoke. I went into protective mode. I didn't know what else to do, so I grabbed my dad's hunting rifle from under my bed and pulled the curtain back.
Holy crap.
Get the hell out of here or I'll shoot. I felt adrenaline rush through me as the creepy man's eyes widened and the most terrifying smile appeared across his face. Trigger began barking louder than I've ever heard him bark.
Off your rocker.
My parents obviously heard the commotion and came running through to our room, turning the light on. My mom screamed as she saw the old man through the window.
He didn't leave
Trigger
yet.
fiercely continuing to bark at the man. My dad yelled at the man, telling him that the police were on their way, but the man legged it back into the woods. Tom was petrified, but I was angry more than anything else. How could some sicko do this?
Right.
I was just extremely glad I had the rifle. The cops caught the guy just a few minutes later and arrested him.
Thank goodness.
We found out a couple of days later that the man was homeless and living in the woods, and he was suffering from a lot of mental issues.
Yeah.
We spent the remainder of Christmas Day at the cabin, but we stayed in our Aunt Billy's cabin overnight. There was no way we were sleeping on our own after what happened.
No.
After that, we went home first thing in the morning and never looked back. My dad only told me the other day that he knew someone was hanging around our cabin, so he intentionally left the rifle under my bed in case I had to use it in
Wow.
self-defense.
You go, Dad.
He did that because he didn't want to scare any of us.
Yeah.
He called the cops after he heard the guy laughing outside of his bedroom window, singing nursery rhymes. He knew it would take a while for the cops to reach the cabin. Safe to say, that was the scariest experience of my life.
Wow. You know, I would have had to at least tell my kid what was going on. It would have scared him, but if you knew somebody was outside of your house, we going on high alert, baby. Lights are coming on, guns getting loaded. Seriously, if somebody is crazy enough to come to your cabin in the woods and start laughing and singing nursery rhymes outside in the snow, they are clearly off their rocker and are capable of anything at this point, right? If they're crazy enough to do that, what else can they do? You got, oh man. This was creepy, man. Spooked, guys. Make sure to head on over to his channel. I hope you and your family have a very Merry Christmas. I'll see you next time. Thanks so much for watching. As always, this is Zueljin signing off, and we'll see you next time.
Break it down.